Hello, hello. Let's see. New camera overlay. All right. How is everyone doing? We are here on a sunny morning in Taipei. Um, the the I saw some funny things I wanted to talk about, but let's see. Do you want to get into talking about Areo Hotah? If we want to talk about Daenerys, anyone else hyped for the camera that rides gaining sentience? I'm actually really excited about uh, Areo Hotah. Mainly because there's so much potential for the character. Like nothing has very little on his backstory is given. He doesn't have very much personality. There's so much opportunity for him. Um, and I'll talk about it more when I actually do the announcement for Area Hotah. But like I see him, I see his character, um, being stuck in a sort of super Brienne minds, like early Brienne mindset that morality is about obedience, um, and just following someone and being true, and eventually him having to discover that that being a good person and being a um, is about more than that. He can't just follow Doran, and that can't just be morality. Like being a good Kingsguard knight cannot just be following the king. And this gets into like the philosophy of like where does your moral code come from? Is it dogmatic in that you're just following somebody else's set of laws that they've put forward, or do you have some sort of guiding principle that's going to drive like your actions day to day? And so so like utilitarianism or something, or existentialism, or something. Like I want to make the world a better place. Like wanting to make the world a better place is actually like a superior, even though it's very simple. Like if you say, oh well, I just do what I think makes the world a better place, that's actually kind of superior to just dogmatic stuff where you're just following another set of rules for no reason. Like there's no inner thought to that. And so that's the problem with Areo Hotah. Is Areo Hotah is essentially a Kingsguard, and so his ideas are just, well, I just have to be obedient to Doran. And there's of course problems with that, and that Doran's a horrible, horrible human being. Same with like, and this all gets into Jaime. Like Jaime, everybody yells at him and is angry at him for being a Kingslayer, but he was actually taking the next step. Like being a good person wasn't following Ares to the T. And so the whole story will be an exploration of how Areo Hotah sees the world, comparing it to Ares Oakheart and comparing it to Balon Swan, and how they all see being essentially Kingsguard. You know, um, yeah. So I'm pretty excited about it because I'm starting to get some good ideas on what I think will go down. But I know most people are thinking, oh, it's time to explore House Dane. That's what I really want to get into. Are you going to do a prologue chapter? Yeah, definitely. I haven't decided if it's going to be kind of the whispers of what we were hearing George R. R. Martin was going to do. What the fan community has kind of come to understand through whispers and such, and questions to George, was that the prologue chapter was going to include Jane Westerling. So everybody thought, oh, it must be. Jamie had ordered a whole bunch of prisoners to be taken from the twins back to Casterly Rock. And so a lot of people thought, well, perhaps it's some sort of trip that includes Jane Westerling, where they're taking people back to Casterly Rock, and then maybe the Brotherhood without banners would attack or something, and there'd be some sort of disaster. And so there was discussions of who could be the point of view. I think some people thinking like either maybe a maester in the company, or Forrester Prester. So there's these random names like thrown around, but the idea is that that people think it was going to be that the party escorting prisoners back to Casterly Rock was going to be the setting. But we don't have to stick to that. But I'm just trying to think if like how much story in that front needs to be told. I haven't thought about that area of of the world too much. Like the borderlands, the border between the Riverlands and the Westerlands, and uh, you know perhaps George wanted to do some world building there because we don't have much of the Westerlands and what those houses think and things like that. So maybe it was a lot of establishing stuff. So I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, we'll eventually do a prologue. But it's just not one of the ones I've thought about. Like the ones I've been thinking about that are probably closer to being the first ones would be Areo Hotah, um, Elaine 2, like maybe Quentin, um, Samwell. That's what I've been thinking about. Daenerys 2. I've been just because I finished Daenerys, I was thinking about Daenerys 2, which would I'd likely have Daenerys going to Karth for that. But that's what I'd be thinking about. But yeah, now I'm just thinking about ideas on Areo Hotah. Um, what's up with Lorath? What's the point of it being in a story? I don't know if it has any point. It's just it was Jock and Hagar's fake story that he was from some place called Lorath. It's the most Lorath is the most ignored, worthless kind of city. It's actually one of the reasons I threw in Lorathi sea salt in the Daenerys chapter, because I was just like, we gotta throw some bones to Lorath. Um, does Aegon think he's real? How will this affect Doran and Ariana's plans? Will he be manipulating him through this? I think Aegon thinks he's real. He lost his cool with Tyrion, um, about that very issue where Tyrion kind of says that, oh, you're like a dead boy and things like that. Um, I think it would be too difficult to keep a secret from John Con, his essential father, for that many years. Um, I think John Con fully believes that Aegon is real, and I don't think over all of those years, um, with the two together, that Aegon could have kept that secret. I just don't. Now there's a lot of like unrealistic things that go into the story, but it would seem really really weird, right? For Aegon to not believe it. I mean, Aegon himself may have like fuzzy memories, much like Daenerys, where he's just like, well, that doesn't add up to what I was told, like that kind of thing. Um, like he might have a Red Door kind of hazy memory, but I think Aegon thinks he's real. Um, and like I said, I don't necessarily think it's very important whether he's real or fake, right? But everybody loves putting that F in front of Aegon. But I mean, I think Daenerys is fake, so it's everybody's. What does it mean to be real? Um, which plot and wins is giving George R. R. Martin writer's block? Uh, that's a good question, but um, I mean, when I think of the plots that like would cause me the biggest problems, it would be Old Town, but I have no idea what's going on in his head. Like he had a real tough time with the Myronese knot, and I don't know why. Like it didn't seem that difficult. Like it honestly didn't seem that difficult. His big problem was like people arriving at the right time, and I don't know. It just um, I like for the life of me, I just like just change the number of days, like change the number of days that his star needed to have peace, or or whatever. Like change the number of days before the wedding. It's it's not that important. Have somebody have the sailing times vary a little bit. I'm not sure why that was such a rough thing, um, but that caused him a lot of trouble. Like for me, it would be like the juggling of plots in Old Town would seem like the most difficult thing to handle. But George seems to have problems with like timing and characters catching up with each other. Um, like he just because the way he writes is he takes one character and then he writes and he writes. So he's not doing like what we're doing for the fan fiction where we're switching chapters. He'll take Danny and then just keep writing with Danny. He'll take John and just keep writing with John. And then afterwards, he like cuts up the chapters, tries to end them well and begin them well in different places, and then tries to fit them in timeline wise. So if you actually look at like the way a lot of his chapters begin, say in A Dance with Dragons, the first chapters, like and the chapters that he spent a lot of time on, like I would say the Bran chapters or like the first Daenerys chapter or the first Jon chapter, there's a lot. The intros are a lot more engaging. They're better planned, and then as time goes on, the start of the chapters are actually not that engaging or interesting because they're not start of chapters. He's literally just taken one huge chapter and chopped it up into pieces. And so it's there's not as much care with starting and stopping. Like when you actually think of like the whole Daenerys story, right? Like the first chapter in Dance with Dragons begins with dead men walking up steps, and you're like, what are we reading here? And it's like, well, actually, like, it has to do with like the the victims of the terrorist attacks of the Sons of the Harpy and things. And then, her final scene is her, getting confronted by Jocko in the Dothraki Sea. And so you have these like pretty incredible like moments, right? But if you take any individual chapter in the middle, like it's like, Naked Dancers is how he starts like a second chapter, like, or another one is like her counting the number of ships that are out on Slaver's Bay. And you're like, okay, like it's all right, but it's not as engaging as like, oh my God, dead people are coming up like steps. Right. And so I think, his problem is really the breakup, like the breakup and aligning of stuff. Anyway, Ilan Payne. I think Ilan Payne would be pretty cool point of view chapter. I think he would be a great prologue to do, but I don't know if he would be the person. Now, Ilan Payne mysteriously disappears. We don't actually know if he's with Jaime or not. Like he's not referenced in the last Jaime chapter of him going to Blackwood and Brackenland. Like you'd think that if Jaime were still, doing his training with Ilan Payne or something, that Ilan would get mentioned, but he's not. So we're not sure why, why he's not mentioned. Maybe just not mentioned just because, he's there, but he's in the background. Or maybe Ilan Payne stayed behind and is part of the escort party to go to take the prisoners to the Westerlands, to Casterly Rock. We're not sure. So, it could be Ilan Payne, but at the same time, like the last time we saw Nymeria, if we're talking about like Nymeria's Arya's checklist as being somewhat a Chekhov's gun, you kind of get this idea that Nymeria is going to kill Ilan Payne at some point, because they're in the same place, right? They're in roughly the same place, and so if she's talking about a huge in the Mercy sample chapter, she talks about a tree watching her. If that's Raven Tree Hall, then, that's somewhat near uh, where Jaime is. And so if Ilan Payne is with Jaime, there'd be a potential that Ilan Payne would be killed by Nymeria. But, if he's actually going west, then he wouldn't be killed by Nymeria. So I think Ilan Payne would be a great freaking prologue point of view, but I don't think it's actually going to be Ilan Payne, because I think Ilan Payne's actually with Jaime still. And so da 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 da. We 100% be Sybil Spicer with Jane in it, and Sybil will be spilled. Well, I don't know what. I mean, it could be Sybil Spicer. It'd be an interesting one. Now, as for her dying, not every single person dies in a point of view. Chet does not die in his point of view. In the prologue of Storm of Swords, he dies shortly after, but he doesn't die. He doesn't die in the prologue, but but he's the one exception, right? Because of all of them, I'm trying to think. Yeah. He's the one exception of someone not dying in the prologue or epilogue. Because we only have two epilogues, right? Storm of Swords and Death Dragons have epilogues, and then the others do not. But yeah, no, I mean, Sybil Slice, that would be a good one. There's a lot of great people that would be. It's almost a shame, right? Like how many cool perspectives there would be. Like, is there a prologue or an epilogue that is not interesting because it's just from characters that we've never seen before? Discuss Raised by Wolves sometime. It's insane. It is. I wish if people watched Raised by Wolves. I mean, Carmen and I did a discussion of at least the first episode. I forget if we had a discussion of the whole season, but it's a bonkers show that I mean, God, Ridley Scott, God bless him. He's just like, what? Something like that would have never been produced if it wasn't just somebody's like passion project. It's just, I'm not saying it's great, but it's so original and different and interesting that I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy it exists. LR Deem 1. LR Deem would be a great one, right? Like Eastwatch, LR Deem at Eastwatch, like with the all the missing characters, all the people that came north with oh shit, I'm totally blanking on on the Lord of Harrenhal who gets beheaded by Jon, Janis Slint. But a lot of people came north with Janis Slint and then they just kind of disappear and we're not sure. A lot of the zealots from A Clash of Kings. LR Deem analysis. Everybody does love LR Deem. I mean, he is the unsung hero of the show. This is very true. The question of Aegon can be fundamentally never revealed. There's always room to question anyone's word. That is true, because the people that really know about Aegon are going to be Illyrio and Varys, and they're the worst, right? Like, what do they say that we can possibly trust? So, well, we'll see. But you're right that like it's real tough, and it's really weird how George has revealed certain information. Like even if you're in the camp that like Joffrey hired the Catspaw, the fact that it's revealed in Tyrion drunkenly misremembering things and coming to that conclusion, it's just such an odd way to reveal the information, So I mean, most people accept it, but it's just such an odd way to be like, well, yep, no, that's it. Tyrion misremembered a bunch of things while being drunk and he figured it out, and that's the truth. But I guess in a point of view, to that, in defense of that argument, like there's only so many ways you can reveal something in a point of view situation. Um, Limited point of view. I mean, if you have a universal, you can do a lot more. Um, can Tattered Prince not be dead yet, so you can get more to dialogue? Is any character in A Song of Ice and Fire not a horse? Tattered Prince. I mean, it's true that like the Tattered Prince was a great character. And it'd be sad. It'd be sad for him to be. I mean, in order for Quentin to live, we kind of need the Tattered Prince to be dead. And for, but there's a lot of other reasons the Tattered Prince needs to be out of commission. For someone like Drink or Arch to put on his cloak and take control of the Windblown, like the Tattered Prince needs to be gone. It's too bad because the Tattered Prince is one of the most interesting characters in A Dance with Dragons. Just the way he speaks, the way he talks, he's so likable and so intelligent, and yet, he's a villain. He's great, and it's. But if you want to have either Drink and Arch like taking over the Windblown, or Quentin alive, we gotta have somebody's got to be in that bed dying, you know. And it's just funny if it's the prince. I mean, it's just so fitting if it's the prince, considering the line was that the prince was 3 days dying. Is any character not a horse? This is in reference to so Glytus. I had a I went on. Glytus had a little game show where I went on and did very, very poorly. And one of the questions was which of these is a fake theory? And one of there's Sandor Clegane as a horse, Lyanna as a horse, Tyrek Lannister as a horse, and I couldn't. I was just like, oh my gosh, the fake one has to be Tyrek Lannister. But no, that was a real theory because the last time Tyrek Lannister was seen, he was a horse, and so confirmed. Khal Drogo's a horse. Could anyone not be a horse? Who would be really difficult to be a horse is actually Varamir Sixskins. Because the last time we saw Varamir Sixskins, he had gone into a wolf, right? So he's like literally a wolf and not a horse. And there was not many horses around. So I'm gonna say that he's a one character that cannot be a horse. Like I could even say Orell's eagle. Like when it got burned up, like maybe Orell like somehow did another jump and got into a horse, got into one of Stannis' horses. But um the let's see here. Um would adding Pokemon enhance the story? I'm trying to think of which Pokemon would be perfect for it. Obviously Carmine would say Haunter, but I mean, what's the evolution of Farfetch'd? Sir Farfetch'd could be in the story, right? He's the evolution. He's the evolution of Farfetch'd, the knight. You discussed that George R. R. Martin gets influenced by what happens in the show. Do you think the ET show will lead them to being a player and more explored in the main story? George R. R. Martin said he has been influenced. Like the two things that are kind of clear about George R. R. Martin's influence is he's spoken about Osha influencing him and wanting to have more Osha after the performance he saw in a Game of Thrones. And then Tyrion, I think it's difficult not to look at Tyrion in A Dance with Dragons and see him more like Peter Dinklage's performance versus like previous Tyrion, which is kind of weird because Tyrion in A Dance with Dragons should be taking this massive dark turn where he's just killed his girlfriend and his dad, and he should just be in the worst place possible, right? And yet he's cracking more jokes in A Dance with Dragons than he does in all the other previous books. You know, in fact, I would say he's the angriest and bitterest in A Game of Thrones. And then he's kind of like weirdly distracted by sex for most of A Clash of Kings. And then A Storm of Swords, he's angry and bitter again. And then he kind of becomes this like weird jokester character, you know, playing chess and cracking inside jokes to himself. And I mean, not that he doesn't have a negative side, but that should be like he should be in the darkest place and the most negative place, and instead he's acting like Peter Dinklage. Now you can argue that, okay, well, yeah, that's how he processes grief, and sure, but it's interesting that he processes grief in the exact same fashion as Peter Dinklage's Tyrion. You know, like I just not that it's completely illogical, but I just find the coincidence, you know, a little odd. So I'd say there are those kind of influences. Now, also, there's a lot about Corlys Velaryon in Fire and Blood, which I'm not positive that he knew that a Corlys Velaryon like prequel was possible at the time he was writing it. Maybe, but it seems it's the inclusion of Corlys Velaryon's stuff in the middle of Fire and Blood it doesn't flow. It's awkward. It's the weirdest thing to just all of a sudden in the middle of the Council of 101 have Maester Gildain say, "Oh, well, now might be a good time to talk about Corlys Velaryon," and him go off about Corlys Velaryon for 3 pages. Like, so I do think that, like, you know, he must have had some sort of inkling, because it's just there's a couple other places in Fire and Blood that are that awkward, but not many. But I think if the ET show goes forward and George R. R. Martin has another chance to put out writing, he will make some ET references. But I'm trying to think like when that opportunity is going to be. You know, the ET doesn't fit too much into a Dunk and Egg story, but maybe, you know, if he's involved in the Corlys Velaryon show, maybe they'd bring up ET more. But I don't think it'll ever be a player. I just think it'll be some sort of non sequitur long explanation of ET so that he can like have it in there. But it's like, when is George really going to have the opportunity? I don't know. I think, you know, maybe he's going to publish some more Dunk and Egg stories, but is he ever going to actually get Fire and Blood Part 2 out? That's toughy. I think if he did Fire and Blood Part 2, he would shove it in there. But it's hard to shove into Fire and Egg. I mean, into Fire and Egg, into Dunk and Egg. But yeah, I do actually think that had if he continued to write, which he's not, but if he ever published something, maybe it'll be in the coffee table book. You know, maybe Elio. I mean, I think Elio and Linda might put out some more stuff about ET. So, hi Preston, love your work, especially Fire and Blood related. I'm a few days out from submitting my master's thesis to committee for review. Any tips and advice? That's a tough one. I don't even know if my master's thesis was very good, but I mean, with writing, I guess all you can do is in that final day, like, I would say have a good night's sleep and then read it aloud. And then I guarantee that, like, reading it aloud, either to yourself or better to someone else, just because when you're reading it aloud to yourself, you tend to still like screw things up. But I would say that reading something aloud really helps identify when not just when a sentence is awkward or doesn't work, but you start understanding your own like logic, and you start seeing like, huh, if I were having a conversation with someone, that wouldn't actually like play. Um, we're all readers here, but we often forget that fundamentally the spoken language is infinitely superior to the written language. Like the spoken language and how our brain naturally puts together spoken words and how that functions, um, and how easily people understand us when we're speaking versus how we're so confused when we read something, um, you should never ignore that. And so I think like taking something to the spoken word, um, is a good way to identify if your message is cohesive and makes sense. And the more you make your writing sound like the spoken word, the better, in my opinion. So I think that, yeah, it's going to take a long time because I'm sure your master's thesis is somewhere between 20 and 100 pages. It doesn't, whether it's on that low end or high end or whatever. Like I know that reading it aloud takes a long time, but it's going to really help if you could like you know grab a friend that's willing to listen to you, or pay somebody to just sit there and listen to you. You'll find some stuff. You'll definitely, every time you read something aloud, you'll find something where you're just like, no, that doesn't fit. Like, huh, I should I should switch that around. Or the person that you're reading it to will be like, wait, what are you talking about there? So that's my best advice on writing. Like it's a pain because reading something aloud is slow. It takes time, but it's really, really, really helpful because, like I say, the spoken word is a infinitely superior method of communication to the written word. Um, dun, dun, dun. Catch me live. Welcome. um, oh, so behind, so behind. Okay. Oh man, this would be something. The Marillion. By the way, on like, if Marillion, like, everything's so weird around Marillion that you kind of feel like maybe he's still alive, but then again, how did he get down from the mountain if he is alive? So I don't know, because nothing makes sense with the Marillion story. But by the way, the Marillion thing with the band is actually a coincidence. George R. R. Martin didn't know about the Marillion band, but they're both just a shortening of Silmarillion. So it's just that George was naming the character after the Silmarillion, and the band named themselves after the Silmarillion, and they both shorten themselves to the same thing. So it's not actually that Marillion the character is named after the band; it's that they're both named after the same. They're both named after the Silmarillion. Um, this is a good question, Pretty Meris, but I think that Pretty Meris is way too good of a character for her to have died. Um, Wait, was she? Did she go with them to? Because this is a big question actually. Maybe she is. I'm trying to remember. Can't believe I'm forgetting if she goes with them underground to get the dragon. Oh no, she does go underground. Um, yeah, I think Pretty Meris is dead then. That's too bad. I was about to say, like, Pretty Meris is a great character. Like, is she? But she's got to be dead. I mean, unless she was somehow captured by Quentin or something. But if I'm putting piecing together like what happened to Quentin, because I think we're going to do a Quentin chapter soon. And I think there's some cool stuff to do with Quentin because Quentin is inside. He's the only perspective inside Marine. So if you're gonna have something like the Brazen Beasts take over the city or something, or Hisdar executed, Quentin is going to be your perspective on that sort of thing. But Pretty Meris, she came down with with them to steal the dragon, but at this point, like, how is she going to get out? It's a labyrinth to get out of the pyramid, so she can't just run out. She would be lost in there. Um, she could get burned up and eaten by the dragon. She could get killed or whatever, but I don't know how she would escape. Like the story claims that the windblown ran away, that somehow Pretty Meris did escape is the claim of Drink and Arch. But how did they find their way out of the maze? I don't know. I think she's a great character, and it would be sad if I mean it's but I just can't think of I personally can't think of a way for her to get out. I mean, was she paying attention? Because Quentin is a smart guy, and like specifically was like trying to remember the way. And then I don't know how anyone else would find their way out of the pyramid other than Quentin. Um, but I don't know. Um, n plus a equals j has a ridiculous amount of evidence. I don't know is to argue against. He never has a single dream. Looks like Ned. He acts just like Ned. Yeah, no, I mean, n+l equals j. Let's remember that this is the combination that most people in the story actually believe, right? This is what Catelyn believes. She believes that Ashara Dane is Jon's mother and Ned is his father. And Cersei, I think, believes something similar. She believes n plus random Dornish peasant equals j. Um, but uh, but it's pretty close, But n+a equals j is the combination we are first given, and so only in the sense that yes, it has the most evidence, but it's also the first answer given, and so that would be, why I would say that it's the unlikely combination, only because it's what we're first presented with. I mean, yeah, you could say, okay, he's subverting expectations by Jon being the son of the person we're specifically told he's the son of at the beginning of the story. Yeah, that could be it. But I've never subscribed to n+l equals j because it was what we were presented first, and it must, and therefore it would be somehow wrong. But you're right that there's lots of evidence. I mean, in the appendix, it says that Jon is the bastard son of Ned. I mean, you could say, well, the appendix is right there, but Jon, and I do actually think Jon being Ned's bastard like makes a great story, but I don't know. Like even in George's outline, he talks about Jon's true parentage. So it seems like the parentage we've been presented with would not be the first one. Would be just be incorrect because it's the first. That's all. What would your opening scene for House of the Dragon be? That's a I mean, so there's a couple ways they could be thinking about the like how the show is going to be presented. Is it going to be presented as in flashbacks, or is it going to be presented as 5 episodes in the past and then we flash forward and it's 5 episodes in the future? I think it would probably work better as a flashback. And so I imagine the opening scene is actually going to be Daemon and Rhaenyra on that beach, and then flash back to stuff. That's how I would do it. I would do it in flashback. But just because there's a lot of events that happened out of order. I mean, and or years apart, and I think flashback works a lot better. But than going forward. So I think my opening scene would be on that beach, like introduce Rhaenyra and Daemon, and then kind of talk about different stuff, and then flash back to stuff. Yeah. E.T. phone home. That is the joke. George R. R. Martin makes these like horrible jokes and horrible references. I mean, Grover Tully So like ET is named after ET the extraterrestrial. What you gonna do? Um, it's written in the seven-pointed star that spirits, whites, and reverence cannot harm a pious man. So as long as he is so as long as he is armored in the faith, Sir Robert cannot be a white if he kills Lancel, Cersei innocent. Um, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of assumptions there. Is Lancel going to be the person for the faith? Is Lancel even that good of a fighter? I don't know if we know that as a fact anyway. But I think most of the religion, I think all of the religion in the story is bunk, and I think all of the religion in our world is bunk. But so I don't necessarily think that Sir Robert Strong is going to be protected by the faith. But um, I do think it's a funny theory that Robert Strong is just some other guy, that he's actually Robert Strong. You take off his helmet and he's just a dude. You're like, wait, I thought you were the Mountain. No, I'm Robert Strong. What are you talking about? Um, the only feasible reason for the irregular seasons is dust. If the first moon cracked, there would be dust for thousands of years. Another moon cracking eclipse would be a good way to bust the wall. First, when you started talking about dust, I was like, "Are you talking about his dark materials? Is it dust?" um, the so let's see, irregular seasons. That's a big question. So some people talk about planetary uh, planetary orbits and things like that, which is straight up George R. R. Martin's alley. Though George R. R. Martin has specifically denied that it is that. Um, Irregular seasons with dust. I mean, all that's kind of true in the sense that, I mean, not specifically dust, but you can bring about um, uh, weather changes through volcanoes bringing up ash and stuff into various levels of the atmosphere. So you can change like the amount of light coming in. You can cause global cooling. Um, but when you say the only feasible reason, of course, there's also nuclear fallout and nuclear, which is kind of the same thing going on as volcanoes cooling the earth. But nuclear bombs and various stuff, and can shoot stuff into the atmosphere and as well, which I guess is also dust. I mean, it's and so it's that could be it as well. And yeah, that could cause global cooling and global heating. I think now, though, I do think they also talk about days shortening for the winters. So it does seem to be actually something with the sun. So, um, planetary orbits seem to make the most sense to me. Even though, I mean, I do think the long night is a nuclear winter, but the one lasting like 20 years. But for irregular seasons, they do talk about days getting shorter. Like there's as if there's actually orbital changes. Um, so I don't know. But yeah, I don't think there was ever a second moon. Like I understand that, like this is. I think this is up like um, David Lightbringer's alley and stuff like that about whether there was previous moons and stuff. But I don't think that story is true. Um, PJ self-insert into fan fiction. I don't know. I mean, there was already a Sir Preston Greenfield. Do we need another Sir Preston? I don't know. I mean, I think um, having more Quentin or more Sweet Robin in the story is already pretty much me being inserted. Um, could it be possible the others would invade Skagos, considering that the map has Skane poking above and in between the walls of Westeros? Well, let's take a look at that map. Um, trying to think like what I would do if I were an other. Um, okay. So there's a lot of different opportunities for the others to get around the wall. So first off, like I'm sure at some point, you could have some ice develop, just around here and then just walk across the ice. Um Getting to Skane and then Skagos. I mean, I think in the Samuel chapter they described this as being pretty rough water, so I couldn't imagine it freezing over. But I mean, I see what you're saying that you can get south of the wall here. Um, but of course, like there are easier ways around the wall. Like the Bridge of Skulls is just freaking. There's just no wall there. Like why not just take the Bridge of Skulls? Like if you're talking, like if the wall is in your way, like there's an actual bridge. There, like we don't even need to crack through the walls. There's a literal fucking bridge that goes right around it, right here at the Bridge of Skulls. Like it's you don't need any freaking horn. Like you can just walk around the wall. Um, and then there's of course Gorn's Way. John has a dream about them scaling the wall. There's a lot of different opportunities. I like Gorn's Way as a way, but honestly, the bridge, like the easiest way for the others to get around the wall is the freaking Bridge of Skulls. It's just there's no wall there. Like just walk around. Like what? We've been debating like how is the wall gonna fall? Like the wall needs to fall. Does it? They could just walk around it. There's like it's as easy as that. Like it's not rocket science. So I mean the most logical way for them to come is just to walk around the Bridge of Skulls. I think the most interesting way is Gorn's Way because it was already hinted at by Ygritte. But um let's see. All right. Let's get because I'm so behind here. Lancelot's buff as fuck. It's true. It's true. I don't know what he was doing some sort of workout after becoming stickly thin and fasting. I guess that fasting lifestyle really helped him. He was fasting everything except for like chicken breast and broccoli. He's doing the Thor the Thor workout. Um, how are we going to deal with the imbalance of power in our story? Time traveling Bran. Should Glass Candle also have some sort of time travel aspect? Um, the it all depends if you think like there's just one puppet master, um, or if there's another time traveler out there. Because if there's another time traveler and we have the quantum leap evil leaper from the future kind of uh, uh, fight going back and forth, you could have that. But I personally, I think there's one time traveler. I think it's Bran. I think that he's probably um, manipulating everybody. I think Quaithe, Marwyn, Euron. Like there's no proof of this, but I think that it's probably just Bran trying to figure out everything in the timeline and work it out. So I mean the power imbalance is just Bran. It's more of a man versus nature versus man, right? It's Bran trying to win this thing against all the events and trying to figure out the right path. It's like I mean it's exactly like Groundhog's Day. It's did we need anybody working against Bill Murray in that movie? No, he was just trying to get it right. But we have a long, long, long time before we get to anything like that. Um, so we'll see. his more dark materials. Good night, Glidus. That was fast. Um, the let's see. It wasn't a moon. It was a space station. It was a Vulcan. It was a Vulcan the whole time. Um, what is going on Skagos? I think that for the most part, because there's so few people that go to Skagos, that once we get there, it's not going to be filled with cannibals or anything like that. It's going to be fairly reasonable people. Um, and it's so I, but what they would do with Bran and things like that, I think we'd have to go back in history and figure out, what Skagos's interests are and how they're brought into the realm, and let's do some quick, because I just know about Skagosi rebellions. Um, Skagos. Hmm. Yeah, the last time we hear of them is there's a rebellion. So, are they going to feel pro or anti the North? Maybe they'd hold Bran hostage, and yeah, I mean, I guess if I'm logically thinking it through, they would have, let's say they have Bran and Osha as hostages, and then Davos has to figure out what he would offer the Sagagosi. Um, like, what would they want? They they're already kind of independent. What can Stannis or Davos offer the Sagagosi? I mean, maybe they'd be really interested in stopping the others or something like that. I don't know, but they do have some power if they have Rickon, and so Davos has to provide something for them, has to promise them something. Um, so it'll be interesting, huh? But we have no clue what's going on in Skagos. All we know is that we saw a unicorn, you know, and that's about it. And Rickon's probably there. Do you think that the others are evil now? Gosh. I think it makes the story much less interesting if the others are just purely evil. I mean, that I think they're a lot of the Secrets of Craster's Keep stuff that that I talked about then about them needing to continue on, um, their their life, and then having genetic problems and things like this, and altering themselves to avoid the nuclear winter and things like that. I think that's more interesting, but it's hard to shake the what the show put, and it's actually in George's original outline just portrays them as being kind of only evil. But at the same time, I was sitting next to a woman that literally asked him, like, are the others just evil, or is there something more complicated behind everything? And George refused to answer the question. So, um, I don't know. At the same time, somebody else asked, like, what analogy is like closest to the others, and he said global warming. So he's all over the place. Maybe he hasn't even decided. So I guess we'll have to figure it out for ourselves. If what you know when the time comes. But I haven't really, I'm just so on the fence, with the show and time travel, and then kind of what I originally thought about. If you're going to be making deals with the others and things like that, what do the others want? They sound like a rational force. So, who rules Skagos? I think there's a Magnar who rules it or something in the same way as like a northern force or something. I think Magnar means lord in Skagosi, so I imagine they have a lord that's called Magnar. Cannibal lives on Skagos. That would be, I mean, that would be funny, right? Oh, no, I mean, you're making a good joke, but that would be an ironic kind of thing, right? That, like, they think cannibals live on Skagos, but it's actually where cannibal fled to. Um, they That would be something because we don't know what happened to Cannibal. Cannibal just disappeared. You know. Do you think they're really cannibals? No, I don't. I don't think. I think there's something metaphorical going um, on why they get that name. But it's an interesting idea that actually Cannibal the dragon is on Skagos the entire time. But of course, Cannibal, he's a wild dragon and can't really be ridden. So I don't know what they do with him. But that's a funny turnaround though. Going looking for cannibals and you find a dragon instead. Um, sheep stealer is in Skagos. Yeah. So I always liked the idea of Nettles going to Essos and maybe even sheep stealer's skeleton being the one that Danny finds in the Red Waste. But um, weirdly, in the world of Ice and Fire, they have Nettles going to the Vale and living in the woods or something for a long time, and having these like burned men. I thought it was a pretty like wimpy, um, not that interesting way to sort of end Nettles' story. Um, but yeah, I mean, if Nettles didn't go to the Vale, then I don't, I mean, I guess we can do whatever we want, um, but I guess sheep stealer somehow this dragon in the Vale and the worshipped by mountain clans or something. It's kind of a whimper to that story. Like, really, you're gonna hide a dragon in the Vale for that many years? Um, if there's an evil leaper, it's Doran Martell. He's got those water gardens to float in. Uh, why does time traveling Bran want to affect Euron? Um, I mean, I definitely think about Doran Martell and who's talking to him because he goes down to the water and stares out and kind of has these vision moments where he falls asleep under the moon. Oh, waits until the moon rises and then opens letters and things like that. I just assumed he's just opening them for Sorella Sand with a glass candle or something, and that maybe Sorella is his main confidant. That's my simple explanation, but of course it could be something much larger. The time traveler, I mean, Doran Martell seems based on the time traveler from Unsound Variations. Um, this just revenge filled bitter guy. Um, they just seem like similar characters who's you know has his eyes on everything and is planning everything out. So I mean, even though I don't necessarily think that Doran Martell is a time traveler, it wouldn't actually like surprise me if like somehow Doran Martell is the one that has the other time travel ability. But um, getting people to wrap their heads around time traveling Bran is one thing. To wrap their heads around a second time traveler, it would be pretty crazy. Um, Now, why time traveling Bran would want to affect Euron? Uh, I think that if time traveling Bran is trying to figure out how to get rid of the others, um, and maybe even eventually take the throne, then it's also in his interest to have Westeros fight amongst itself. But I'm trying to think if like Euron helps bring Danny, because Euron gets exiled, and then he's watching Danny. Danny's coming back because dragons are part of Bran's original vision. So maybe Bran really wants dragons to be part of this battle against the others. But I'm trying to think like if Euron is necessary yet to bring Danny back. And Euron, I guess, is necessary in that Euron sends Victarion. Victarion is definitely part of Danny's House of the Undying visions, because we have the gray-lipped um, person on the prow, smiling sadly, which describes Victarion in the Victarion sample chapter. So if Euron causes Victarion you know, might influence Dany somehow. I mean, I think Victarion's going to capture a dragon, so he's going to bring a dragon back to Westeros. Is that the dragon that the others are going to get? Time traveling Bran has thought all of these things through somehow. Um, so I don't know. It's just whatever event brings out the result he wants. Um, but yeah, it's not really clear right now. But somebody seems to want Euron to do something, or maybe it's Euron himself. Maybe he's the puppet. But somebody sent. He has that dream when he was young about flying. So it seems like someone was visiting him. Maybe it was Bloodraven, and I don't know, or the Children of the Forest. So and they're the ones trying to cause chaos south of the wall, and Bran's trying to fix it. Eh, it's really hard to say at this point. Oh man. Um, it doesn't need to be nuclear post-apocalypse. A thousand dragons smashing into the ground would have the same effect. Just seems to fit the story better. Yeah, yeah. Yes, yes. People are like, oh, Preston, you're crazy. Like nuclear apocalypse. Like it's clearly the second sun hatching and having like a thousand dragons coming out and smashing into the ground. Like, come on. Yes. Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting with Cannibal on Skyghost. I just don't know how he'd be useful at all. Wall- Walls fall over. That'd be also just funny. Like how did the wall fall? Well, walls fall when you don't do proper maintenance. When was the last time we did maintenance on the wall near Oakenshield or whatever? Was that one of the stations? I've got to come up with a. Um, let me. I'm totally forgetting all of the wall stations. Let's see. Let's find a good one. Let's see. How about Hoarfrost? Yeah. When was the last time, Alpha Yarwick did maintenance at Hoarfrost and the wall just fell over? And that's how the others went through. They didn't do proper maintenance. Yeah. That's what people just did not expect that one. How does one best cook unicorn? Um, there's some questions about whether it's actually like a one horned goat. Um, I think there's a I think there's actually like an animal in history of of that there was like an actual one horned goat or something that might have existed. Um, these goaticorns or something, but it's hard to really say. Um, but maybe I think I think they the I'm trying to think of the description of the goat of the one horn, which I think is from the John's first chapter. Um, if he describes it as actually a one horned goat, because that actually affects what whether or not you're gonna. Yeah, that's it. He actually says that it was an enormous goat. They were hunting too. A wild rain lashed upon his black brothers as he tore at the flesh of the enormous goat, washing the blood from his side where the goat's long horn had raked him. So, I mean, if you're talking, if it's going to taste like goat meat, you want to stew that and have it with a sauce. Goat, tends to be very very gamey. Tends to have a little bit of dirty flavor to it. So you want to make sure that that's stewed and cooked for a long time, so it's not so tough, and that you add some sort of nice sauce to it. Not that I haven't had just goat meat on a stick, but I think there's better ways to serve goat. But you know, have goat and a good um, West African groundnut sauce with some fufu might be the best way. Yeah, and have it be unicorn. Okay. Um, Why do you think Rhaenys was stabbed about 50 times? Do you think it's possible Aegon and her survived like Bran and Rickon? Um, I think George has said in an interview that Rhaenys is absolutely 100% dead. Um, but I think Rhaenys was only stabbed 50 times to kind of make um, the Lannister forces Amory Lorch. Amory Lorch does it, right? To make Amory Lorch seem like psychotic. I think that's the only reason. But it seems really, it's just really weird. I mean, you're right that like it seems excessive to stab somebody 50 times, but I think it's just to make Amory Lorch into a psycho that needs to be killed. Um, was the reason why why he did it. It's just to kind of add character and villain to him. Um, George R. R. Martin has a lot of these completely illogical psychos in the story. Like, would the Brave Companions ever exist? Like at that point, it's like so above and beyond what human beings would even do. How is what they do even enjoyable? But no, they just do that kind of stuff. He just has those characters. Um, how do you think the story would change if Barristan made it back to Westeros and met Aegon? Hmm, that's a very good question. Now, Barristan comes up with his own reasons to support various people and then not to support him. I'm not saying he's a perfect character. He liked Rhaegar a lot. He liked Rhaegar a lot. So you'd think that if he believed that Aegon were the son of Rhaegar, he'd want to support him. But then again, he spent a lot of time with Dany, and he might you know he definitely became attached to Dany. So um, I think he would still have some loyalty to Dany just from his time with her. Um, and so I think in that situation, he would be torn. He'd be really torn, but he would eventually side with Dany. Now, if he thought Dany were dead and he spent a whole bunch of time with Aegon, maybe he would try to have some sort of peace, try to broker a marriage or something. But it would be a situation where he'd be really, really torn between them, and would not know what to do. It would make a good story. If but I'm not. Barristan though looks like a goner. Looks like a guy. I mean, we don't have to have him be a goner, but he looks like a goner in the battle. Um, yeah, the others were way antagonistic to Waymar. It's pretty hard to read that a different way. Um, well, so Waymar interprets certain things. Like he thinks that the others are laughing at him, and I'm trying to let's see who brings their sword first. Um, the I'm trying to remember if Waymar takes his sword out first. Yeah, it says Waymar called out, "Can you see anything?" Waymar, turning in slow circles, suddenly wary, his sword in hand. Um, why is it so cold? So I mean, Waymar has his sword out first, um, and he may have felt the cold, but though though the others attack Waymar first. So Waymar has a sword out, but the others attack Waymar. So Waymar interprets them as laughing at him, but you know, you could claim that, you know, they saw him as a threat. But it's also like, I mean, the others also seem to attack um, uh, the Fist of the First Men unprovoked as well. So they do seem to be just being the aggressors. I mean, one could make an argument if you added a little more information, like, oh, somebody stole our baby, or you know, someone killed our person first, or why were you on this path, or something at a certain time, or somebody killed us earlier with dragon glass. I mean, there could be something where it's being little fingered. You know, it's Starks and Lannisters being pushed to war by something that we haven't learned yet. That's all possible, rather than the others spontaneously suddenly being the aggressors out of nowhere after 8,000 years. Um, so it's tough. I said it's tough. I know people are taking shots on that, but the you know, it's, you know, as they're saying, Waymore Royce was out of his territory. It's certainly possible. A lot of all the information isn't known. Something could be completely added. Um, do you think time traveling Bran takes away from the story? I have much less interest since he was introduced. Yeah, I mean, I was never a fan of time traveling Bran. I was also in denial about it. I didn't like it. I didn't like the idea at all. I think that, generally speaking, the story was crowded. Do we need another concept like this? Um, but you know, I was ignoring all of the clues. But once the show happened, and I was like, ah, no, it's definitely there. What was I doing? Um, uh, which dinner party guy? The dinner party, the woman sitting next to me at the dinner party is the one that asked about the others. I don't know which dinner party guy uh, that they were there. I was at a table with a woman and her husband, and she asked about the others. Her husband was just really thankful and was just like, George, I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you for all of your work. And then the Italian was at my table, and he asked about Lady Stoneheart. And then I can't remember who else was at the table. I think we actually had we had some empty spaces at our table, so it was we were lucky. So we got a little more attention, but but um, but yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, it's just that it's there now. I mean, I don't. I think it wasn't needed. I don't think time travel was needed, but it's there. What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? I mean, it. You have to ask yourself, like, do you think Under Siege and Unsound Variations are good stories, and do you think that time travel is an interesting aspect of everything? I think it can be when we start thinking about um, philosophy and whether or not uh, people have free will and stuff like that. I think that time travel brings up that kind of stuff, but then again, that those kind of stuffs were already, that kind of stuff was already brought up with religion in general and prophecy. So I think that you didn't necessarily need it. And I thought all the prophecies being fake was a more interesting idea, but now time travel is probably the source of a lot of the prophecies. So we'll, you know, mm, um, what do you think happens to Cersei, Jamie Tommen when Aegon comes to town? I think Cersei's too big of a character um, to get rid of, so she'll either flee to back to Casterly Rock or to Dorne. I think would be um, my guess. So she might become like the a pawn or controlled by Dorne, or she might just go back to Casterly Rock. But I don't think she's gonna die. I think she's too interesting for her to be killed. Um, um, Let's see here. Da, da, da. Aegon will win over Tom and get him to relinquish him by giving him a basket of kittens. That'd be something. Um, Goat isn't just gamey. There's a lot of bones and cartilage. There's a lot of bones and cartilage and fat. It's all kind of mixed together. So it's very chewy. But like I said, I've eaten it mostly in Middle Eastern and African dishes. Um, where you're gonna have a lot of sauces. I mean, I have had it on sticks too, but but some people really like all of the fat and cartilage and stuff. I think if you're in a place where you're not getting as much milk for your calcium, you kind of you actually like look out for food that has a lot of tiny small bones and cartilage so that you can get calcium from that. So um like uh like the Chinese don't drink much milk, but they love like chicken wings and stuff and chicken's feet, so they can like eat all the cartilage and stuff in it. Um, is Satin the bastard son of Mor's Umber? Um, I think you mean Horsebane, right? Because Horsebane is the one that was in Old Town, uh, rather than Crow's food. Um, so it would be funny. It would be funny if he were the bastard son. I have to look at the timeline when Horsebane um, went to Old Town. Hother is his real name. Um, let's see. His father believed him the makings of a maester, sent him to study the Citadel in 250. Um, Old Town Whore tried to rob him, so Othar disemboweled him. So, unfortunately, like even if we assume that Horsebane was in Old Town for like 10 years, that still makes him way too old to be Satin's father. Because Satin's a young guy, so you're looking for somebody that was in Old Town in like 280, not somebody that was in Old Town in 250 or 260. So unfortunately, Satin, not the bastard son of Horsebane. Um, let's see. Top 5 characters to join my dinner party. Oh man, can we get? Let's see. We get. um, Alardim, one of the sorrowful men from Karth. Just gonna pick some randoms. Let's get the Widow of the Waterfront. Um, uh, let's get Darkstar, and I'll go with Sybil Spicer too. Like I think there's just a lot of different like all these people that were just like, wow, you have a lot of information on some realm of the world that like we don't know about, that we want more about. You see, you wouldn't want one of the normal characters because we know what's going on in their head. We want some character where we're just like, what? What's that perspective? Like, what did you see? Sybil Spicer? Like, what's going on with your life? Um, so definitely, sorrowful men just be like, what's going on with your entire like guild? I have no clue, Um, little boy time telling first Storm King how to build Storm's End is definitely time traveling Bran, right? I don't know. Like I think that you can't go around changing things before your birth and expect yourself to be born. Um, it might be a different time traveler, but George is really focused on genetics, and so he of all people would know that if you changed just a small thing and you have sex at a different time, you're not producing the same kid. Um, and so I don't know like if Bran would want to be doing much interfering before his own birth. Um, so that's the only reason. If it were somebody else's story, I'd be like, yeah, why not? Why not? Because people don't think about that stuff, you know. Like I say, like Back to the Future, Marty should not be Marty. That's just it's ridiculous that after all of those changes, where his parents are completely different people, that he would be that his brother, sister, and him are genetically identical to the way they were. I mean, that's just impossible. Impossible. Like his mom and dad are like clearly like more loving and like people. Like they're going to be having sex in a slightly different position at a slightly different time on a slightly different day, on a slightly different bed because they're richer now. They're not going to be in that saggy old mattress. They're going to have like a brand new bed. Like something's going to be different that's going to knock a completely different sperm into into place, and they're going to be genetically different. So like I understand that the people writing Back to the Future, like they're not thinking about this. This is all for fun. But this is George R. R. Martin, and he's really focused on genetics. Like that's his thing. So there's no way. I just don't see Bran making changes before his own birth. Yeah. I mean, one could make the argument that time traveling Bran is a completely and utterly different Bran. Just has the name Bran, but he's completely, utterly not Bran. But then it's like him being Bran is just a titular name thing. He's just a time traveling some other dude who has the name Bran. I mean, it's like grabbing somebody on the street named Preston and asking him about Ice and Fire. You know, your name is Preston, right? Like, well, yeah. But have you checked out Severance? I have not checked out Severance. Let's see what this is a show, I imagine. Oh, a thriller series. Oh, it's got Adam Scott and Patricia Arquette in it. Oh. I did recently hear about this show. Biotech company uses severance medical procedures to separate non-work memories of some of their employees from their work memories. Once severed, Mark gradually uncovers a web of conspiracy. Oh, that's interesting. No, I heard about this and the kind of workplace metaphors that they're talking about. I should probably check that out. Um, you don't have free will, but don't worry is a great video. I've actually watched this one, Dr. Sabine Hassenfelder. Recently, this has all been like the universal stuff has all been kind of depressing me lately. Like the idea that the universe is going to end in a big whimper, um, quintillion years in the future of just us stretching out and separating, is just kind of sad. That's a depressing idea. I mean, I guess all the endings of the universe are kind of depressing. Like it's just as bad, I guess, if the universe collapses upon itself. Maybe even worse because we have less time. But all these big physicists have, yeah, they've been depressing me. How did the Dothrakis know Drogon won't Dracarys? I don't think they did know. I think they kind of approached slowly. And didn't I don't know, didn't think it through. Because I've thought about that, like from their perspective, considering that Drogon just burns one of their horses, right? Like, why would you approach a dragon? Like, why wouldn't you be running? Did they think they could kill the dragon? Did they think they could get Dany beforehand? Did they think they could talk to her? Were they just was there such a religious obligation to grab a member of the Dosh Kaleen that they had to. Um, yeah, I don't necessarily think it all makes a lot of sense, but George is the one that had Cal Jocko approach. So um, it was a dangerous move. They approached the Danny and her dragon and figuring that they could somehow um, capture her or kill her or something. And yeah, no, I think it's a little bit of a of a plot hole, to be honest. But should there have been a more coordinated attempt? Like should they have had a spear or a net or something? Yeah, maybe, maybe. One of the submissions actually had uh, discussion of that actually the reason they ran into each other is that Jaka was hunting them and tracking them. But still, it's such a dangerous idea that Jaka was driven to desperation because of Pono's rise. He needed something to uh, to to win, so so he was tracking Drogon to in order to get a control of it, so he could you know win. Which I suppose it makes sense, but they didn't seem to have any nets or spears or anything like that. So yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a it's a bit of a plot hole, I admit, but it's a plot hole that George put in that I didn't really plug. But you're right that Jocko and his Jocko and his 50 riders are pretty brave to approach Drogon. Um, mm, 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 mm. Yeah, goat is pretty common in the Caribbean. Yeah, I've had goat roti, which is pretty great. Um, yeah, so there's a lot of East Indian influence in the Caribbean, and so you get these like Indian flatbreads, and then they kind of throw in some goat. Sometimes it's curried, and people eat it, and yeah, I've had some goat there too, but the oh, goat brain is a delicacy in certain Indian regions. I've never eaten goat brain. I've eaten cow brain. That was a delicacy in Egypt, and so I had cow brain. Um, Kind of just tasted like mayonnaise, really. It's just fat, you know. Um, Cats are about as terrible for the ecosystem as a non-human can be. It's true. They've killed a lot of bird species. I think there's some. I've heard some statistic that like most bird species have been killed by domesticated cats. Um, let's try to have Satin wake up John with a true love kiss in the fanfic. That'd be funny. He like kisses him and then he just doesn't wake up, and he's like, "Oh no." Satin's too good of a character though to waste. Somehow Satin's gonna have to survive. It's gonna be tough though. The wall is in chaos. All of the wildlings might be burned up in the shield hall, and then um, uh, will he be part of the the Night's Watch is going to be attacking probably the King's Men, people like that, to try to take control of everything. But where Satin would fall, I guess he would be imprisoned by the other Night's Watch if the Night's Watch won. But if the Night's Watch lost, he's Night's Watch and he wouldn't be trusted by the King's Men or the Wildlings. So it's Satin's in a really bad position because being on John's side, being close to John is like the worst position to be in the wall. Um, the Why did John and other Northerners wear all that fur when they were in King's Landing? Shouldn't they think it's super warm compared to Winterfell? Uh, are we talking about like when in the show? I guess it was still a little cold is the idea. Um, But you're right that they shouldn't have been wearing that much fur. Maybe they have different levels of fur. Maybe they switch to different animal fur types. They just look all the same. But you're right that it would be pretty warm. They should have taken it down a notch. Um, let's see here. Uh, thank you, thank you, Chandler. Think if the spin-off series do well, George might regain his momentum of his early trilogy and finish off the series by 2026. You are a very optimistic a person. Um, I think that with regard to House of the Dragon, I think House of the Dragon, like it's hard to believe that House of the Dragon is going to be um, a huge hit. Like say for a second that it's just a fantastic show. All right, let's just say that it's just like brilliant. Um, will people be interested in it anyway? And will they be interested in it at Game of Thrones level? No way at Game of Thrones level. But say people start tuning in and it's as successful as say Succession or something like that. Um, he That's still only pretty good. Um, Now, would that make George want to write Winds of Winter? Well, I mean, you'd think that would make him want to write more Fire and Blood and focus on the other prequels, because if it's a success and people start watching, then they're going to greenlight Dunk and Egg, and he's going to get focused on writing Dunk and Egg stories or Fire and Blood Part Two. So it's some people wonder about that the only possibility is going to be the reverse, that it bombs, and so that it bombs, then they stop and they don't greenlight anything. They're just like, no, the Game of Thrones IP is dead, and so they cancel everything, and then George gets depressed. But then if he's depressed, he's going to have no momentum either. So I don't know. I think you're kind of screwed either way. Either it does really well and George is happy, and then he goes and writes Fire and Blood and Dunk and Egg, or it does poorly and he gets depressed and he doesn't do anything. He loses all of his motivation. I don't think there's many paths to get him to Winds of Winter. Um, but who knows? Who knows? I mean, I hope I'm wrong, but John can't get Satin pregnant with his vows. Just saying. It's true. It's true. Um, yeah. No, I mean, I think it would be really good for the story. I think it would be really good for the story to have Satin be a kind of major character going forward. Um, you know, Melisandre I mean, I guess we're stuck with Melisandre and Satin. I'm trying to think of like what other characters I really like that are. I mean, if Justin Massey can make it to the Wall, I really love Justin Massey. Like there'd be some interesting stuff there. Um, but it's a there's a lot of death and destruction happening, whether it be from the others or whether it be from each other or whether it be from the Weeper. It's gonna be hard for people to live on that front. But uh, uh, wins maybe by 2026. Sweet summer child. Um, Love the streams, all you do. None so awesome, bro. Thank you, Wisdom. Um, let's see. Uh, Send George amphetamines and cocaine. Would his heart take it? I mean, George, not to be too insulting, but George, like people mentioned, like George's out of shape. But George, like if you actually like spend the time to look at George, like underneath his beard and like the vests he wears, which tries to hide, he really is quite a big guy. Um, for being kind of short. Um, he's not super healthy, but he's got he's got a lot of money, so he's got to have some doctors. Um, George is pulling a Warhammer 40k. The ending is not so good. It's better to fill out the middle. But is Warhammer 40k? Did they ever even think that it would end? Like Warhammer 40k is the most depressing situation you could possibly have for a setting, right? Like you're trying to have the worst possible hell. It's not even on Earth, but hell um, world where there's just no possibility of peace ever happening, because every single character is just horrible and war based and all of this, and fascist and dreadful and pain oriented, and it's just brutal world. um but the Westeros is bad. It's not that. It's not 44 or 40k bad. But George is really good at writing endings. He has like really beautiful endings. They're the best parts of his short stories. So, you know, if he ever got to his ending, I think it would be a really beautifully written ending. But because that's his strong point. But yeah, but I think it's the getting there. I think he would know how to do the very ending. I just don't think he'd know how to do like leading up into the ending. But everyone is short compared to you, Preston. I once, if going to Holland, going to the Netherlands, it's kind of one of those places where you're walking around and you're like, wow, I'm normal. I'm normal. I look people in the eye. You're like having a conversation with people, like looking people like in the eye. It's a really odd thing because you're like back and neck are doing different things, and you're like, huh, this is very odd, huh. Uh, um, what's my reasoning for not liking the other Dune books? I mean they're fine. Um, I I don't know. I think they're fine. It's just I don't know. I think it's just having memorable characters and the plots are more complicated. I think maybe just Dune is such a simple, easy story with like very simple, basic um, characters that makes people like it so much, and things. Um, every time there's a jump to a new setting where you have to like get to know everybody new, it's hard to get into the story again. Um, I guess that was the problem. So I don't know. I mean, they're okay, but I I'm not sure. I wouldn't say that I don't like them. I like them fine, but I just think that they're not as strong as Dune. Um, let's see here. Uh, anyway, I wanted to briefly go over the Daenerys chapter, in case everybody didn't get like all of the little references that was in this. Let's see. Do I am I can I go through the entire? Oh, good. Um, so I wanted to show like if if everybody got these references, we'll do real quick here. Um, okay, so the Daenerys chapter, we kind of started obviously as our Night's Watch vow, and then Daenerys talking about the rules and everything, um, and comparing it to the Night's Watch vow, and then we kind of go back in time to Viserys talking about the how the vows came in, which we kind of needed. And so I wanted to bring up Maester Aemon just because Maester Aemon was on his way to meet Daenerys and she would never get to meet him. But the fact that like she actually did know of him, I thought was just a funny, interesting thing to have in there. Um, Danny did not have the patience to lead the Dosh Kaleen. This was kind of the foreshadowing to the ending, because at the ending she's going to lead the Dosh Kaleen. She just doesn't have the patience to lead the Dosh Kaleen, but she wants, her leading the Dosh Kaleen is a big deal. Referencing obviously the stallion that mounts the world. Then we get the crutch and the gnarled piece of wood with our reference to Sir Willem Derry walking around. Now this actually, her having freedom of the city, or at least no one told her otherwise. That's actually a reference to Theon with the Ghost of Winterfell. So some people did read this and got like, oh, it has a Ghost of Winterfell feel because it's like winter and she's just this like, pawn there. Then going back in time, remembering the crack, finishing up the last Daenerys chapter, Dracarys, but instead Drogon flies off because he's supposed to fly back at sunset. Your demon has forsaken you. That's I'm referencing Aeron there because Euron is like, your god has forsaken you, so Drogon forsakes her. So originally, I'd envisioned this chapter as being more of an Aeron parallel, but actually it kind of didn't happen as the submissions came together. Obviously, her being dragged behind the horse is calling back to the wine cellar. Her draped over the back of Mago's horse like a carcass. I originally had this as a reference to the Hotah from a Game of Thrones, like Drogo draping over this like big white lion, and so she's this white lion as well. But it was a little too subtle, and so somebody was like, "Oh, why would you like mention this carcass and not mention the Hotah?" And I was like, "Well, it was supposed to be the Hotah," so I added just like the carcass of a Hotah to just make it more explicit. Because if it was just Dany draped over the horse like a carcass, maybe people wouldn't have gotten it. And then the rickety cart is obviously cart queen and all this. And then let's see. I have a mute dour-faced woman, which is both a reference to like Davos and Aeron, because they're always getting visited by mute dour-faced people to feed them. But this person is changing her straw and her diarrhea. 200 Leagues to Vastoth Rock, and now we're in the Asha kind of parallel back to the with the rains dropping, and then we had here at the end her waking up to the Valyrian Sphinx, this was a recommendation from Trey the Explainer, where we're talking about the Tyrion chapter where he sees the other Valyrian Sphinx, and it's encased in ice, and the like of 79 Sentinels. Okay, so a lot of references, I know. And then we get Dany getting her strength back. The ceremonies were written in stone. I thought this was, so one of the things I thought was really funny in a Game of Thrones is that Miri Mazdur mentions that the Dothraki have magic of corn, horse, and grass. And I always thought like corn magic is hilarious because it's just like, why? What is corn magic? So I wanted to have the mention of corn magic again, like these endless lectures of corn magic, which this is actually in there as a joke, but I don't know if anybody laughed at that. But the endless lectures on corn magic, which I thought is funny. Obviously, get Khaleesi Telloro, where you think it's going to be she thinks it's about her being skinny, but it's really about Vace Telloro. Okay, then small bands of Khalasars trickling into the city, it growing with the gifts being brought, and then Calpona returning. We get these rumors. I had to mention Rogoro, Calmoro's son. I made him sullen, but he's just this random character mentioned in Game of Thrones. So I'm like, well, we've got to bring him back because it's very George R. R. Martin to bring back random characters for no reason. He's just all of his stories do this. Like they have some random character in the beginning, and then he just brings them back for no reason later on. Bride must be presented to Dash Kaleen. Originally, I had here the princess must be presented to the Dash Kaleen because that's actually the words of Jorah, and so she would be remembering Jorah's words. The princess must be presented, but it doesn't really make sense if you don't immediately like remember that line, like because the daughter's not really a princess, so she's either a queen or a daughter. So it's I suppose she's Zekko's princess, I suppose, but that's not really. So moon being covered, so many chapters have references to the moon, and so we have to kind of bring that back. Days growing shorter. This is kind of a little bit of Bran in here, and then we go right into the Bran kind of stuff where Khaleesi Taloro is brought. She's summoned before the one-eyed crone. She's got this black barked tree. That's the trees from the House of the Undying that make Shade of the Evening. And then, it's shining like metal, just kind of like a image of the Iron Throne or something to just contrast werewood. And then eating with her, obviously, this is our heavy-handed Bloodraven references with the horse steak. And then this conversation of why did Jocko not kill you? That's actually kind of a callback to Roose Bolton talking to Jaime about why Vargo Hoat took his hand. And then let's see, we get our cannibalism reference because it's Bran. And then Dash Kaleen kneel to no one. This is added because you kind of you want to have this thing at the end where the Dash Kaleen kneel to no one, but then they're kneeling at the end because this is everything's shifting around here. And then let's see here. Then we're referencing, we're trying to make sure why Pono would value Dany, and so we're kind of saying, oh, it's in the tradition of Drogo. And we got, obviously we're talking about the prophecy, and then we get to Karth and the Karth prophecy. What's funny is I had a lot of people make comments like, oh, I really thought that a Dany chapter would have more prophecy in it. And I was like, the whole chapter is about prophecy. Like the whole thing, it's either about like the stallion of the mounts of the world or literally fulfilling the House of the Undying prophecies. So it was really kind of funny. In fact, I dialed it back. Most people's submissions were very, very heavy on prophecy. And I was like, okay, we just can't have that much freaking prophecy in here, so we got to dial it back some, so there's a lot on prophecy in this. So, but nonetheless, we get to the Red Waste, mentioning Vaes Taloro, trying to turn the entire story of a Game of Thrones on its head by saying that, they were meant to go east instead of west, and stuff like that. Giving Pono the motivation of the crone here with her being the mother of Motho and hating Pono, and then making her rethink Illyrio even more. So like I always thought this little thing, I added this line here about Daria because I really thought that Daria was always so fishy, where she sends Daria to invite Viserys to dinner, and he gets all upset, and he's like, no one commands me, and it's like, well, she invited her. Like, what did Daria say? And I was like, well, it's a good reason to mistrust Daria. Maybe she was, an agent of Illyrio and Jorah. And then trying to give some sort of logic to Illyrio's plans. And then we get obviously the skull, which and our Bittersteel reference, which we dialed back a lot. I got a lot of credit. My original thing had the series liking Bittersteel a lot more, and people were very negative that, so I dialed it back. And so he's just kind of admires an aspect of him instead. And some people, I got one criticism saying, like, obviously when Bittersteel's golden skull is already a reference to Viserys. It's just, subtle, and now it's explicit. And I was like, I don't know, did people really get that? So this is very explicit connection of Bittersteel to Viserys here by connecting the golden skulls. But I don't know. The okay, so then Daenerys refuses, and then we have here the shadow people going into Vastoth Rock, and this is actually people heading into Vastoth Rock. Pono taking a long time into Vastoth Rock. This is actually a callback to Tormund going through the tunnel, when his wildlings arrive, and it taking so very long to go through the tunnel, and he actually makes a joke that the tunnel needs to be widened. And so here, like, this random merchant from the Eastern Market is like, you should push the stallions apart. But the shadow of the horse gate was sacred. That's me jamming in the house Quaith's prophecy. To touch the light, you have to pass beneath the shadow. So right there is where I popped that in case anybody caught that. Let's see. Jacko's Khalasar explaining Dany's feelings on him. This is all consistent with past stuff. Erawa, and then the three offerings. There's not much. There's no real callback to that. That's just description, and you get to. I thought it was kind of interesting to have Dothraki garbed in things that Dothraki are normally not garbed in. Like Kahoric fur or whatever. Like, they don't know what to do, so I guess we're gonna wear some Kahoric fur. Giving Dany a motivation, so for killing Pono, so you get Ago and the bow, and we have to mention the Arak as well, and then this is one of the submissions had this a way the remembering words. This is all. Most of the dialogue actually comes from, like I say, two submissions are the main backbone, and then I kind of flourish things, change the language around here. So most of my influence is just adding in these little references. So I'm doing like a Star Wars movie where it's just all fucking references and callbacks. Then I have here the night Daenerys dreamed she was wrapped in chains, drowning. I thought a lot about like how long it would take Drogon to fly from Dragonstone to Vastoth Rock. And by the way, I've gotten a lot of comments from people reading the chapter being like, how is Drogon going all the way to Dragonstone? And like in Westeros, like assuming that he's going all the way to Westeros. I was like, oh gosh. Like, should I have actually explained that there's a second Dragonstone in the Dothraki Sea? Like, there was like a few of them. Like, why is he flying all the way back to Dragonstone? You're like, oh gosh. So, but I figured that if Drogon were gonna begin his trip towards Vastoth Rock, it would begin the night that she dreamed she was wrapped in chains, drowning, and that this not only gives her ideas on what to do, but And the chains. I was also thinking, well, maybe people will connect the chains with the chained wolf. The winged wolf prophecy that Danny as the winged wolf or something. I don't know. I just figured something like that would be in there. And then we get to the heart. This is this not much was changed here from a submission. This is actually once we get to the ceremony, and then I love the idea of Calpono's bride just being like just so much better than Danny at everything. Like she just eats the heart easily. She's like super muscular. She doesn't care about the cold. She's confident. Like I love the idea that Zeko's daughter is just like so much cooler than everybody else. And so I think in my original outline, Zeko's daughter dies, but Zeko's daughter's fate is complete mystery at the end. So we may have a return of Zeko's daughter, just because I think Zeko's daughter is a really cool character, just being so much better, like like at everything. Let's see here. She swallows. She does the ceremony, obviously. Oh, so some people weren't getting this. Like, so she starts getting into this being a stage. And so like the idea is that, like we're in the Mercy chapter, this is all like people saying lines. Like Mercy is trying to get Raph the Sweetling to say his lines and things like this. She is saying her lines in a show. And so I referenced stage. What's really weird is my original draft I had theater, and the editor comes back, and one of the editors comes back, and he's like, it's really weird, but George R. R. Martin never uses the word theater in all of A Song of Ice and Fire. I was like, what? How is that not? What? Really? Because like there's ancient Greek theaters, there's ancient Roman theaters. Like theaters are not like a new thing. And he's like, I know, but it's always stage. And I was like, huh, that's so odd. That is so odd that George R. R. Martin never uses the word theater. So it's stage. And so this line here, then the house fell silent. Like they're actually outside. And one of my editors came back and was like, I'm confused. How are they in a house now? And it's like, well, no, like it's a theater reference. The house is the audience of a show. And so when the house falls silent, we're in this. So, and so then we go on and we get Danny's own little melodramatic description of Volantis falling, her scraping her cheeks like Catelyn, and then they start walking to the womb of the world. I got some criticism that I mentioned the word womb too much. That it's just too much womb. Talking about Miro and the Titan's bastard. I actually got some comments from people that are like, Danny grew up in Bravos. Wouldn't she know what the Titan's bastard is? Or shouldn't she know what the Titan of Bravos is? I'm like, yeah, it's all very weird. It's all very weird. And so but I thought that Miro definitely needs some more references in general, considering that he's a good character. And then let's see. And then, I definitely thought that Danny didn't have enough inner monologue. I still don't think she has enough inner monologue, but, we tried to add more here about her feeling trapped with going back to the 79 Sentinels again, like seeing the statues as giving her a feeling of being trapped. And then we have the rowdy party, which is, of course, like a red wedding kind of thing. She wanted everybody to get drunk so that they wouldn't notice her slip off, and so that they wouldn't be prepared for her once she got on Drogon. But of course, you don't know this. Getting into the womb of the world. All of this is, we get Calpono's manhood. I got a lot of compliments about imitating George R. R. Martin's style with this. They're like, yes, this is very George R. R. Martin. Like having dicks out. I was like, yes, I know. So, and then she she gets her floating and falling thing, which is so much of Bran and Aaron and all sorts of people, and then uh, wondering who she is the with the red door and the mask of Quaithe, and then she reaches for the starlight, which is that's touching the light is essentially what we're going for there. But I didn't want it to. It's pretty heavy handed, but I didn't want it to be too heavy handed. Like it actually, an earlier draft actually had her. She touched the light, and I was like, nah, let's dial it back. Let's dial it back. And then them yelling in panic. And then I think I liked the idea of like Pono being on top of this horse riding naked, covered in cum and vaginal juices. Like it's so George R. R. Martin, but it's just but it's just this idea of this guy like riding naked in the snow. Like if I were actually going to extend the chapter, I'd have much more description of naked Pono riding his horse in the snow away. And then obviously like they have them crawling out. She says her words. We get the callback of earlier in the chapter of her remembering her words, and then the fulfillment of the House of the Undying prophecy. So it's a lot of callbacks. It's a lot of prophecy, but I tried not to have it, but I don't know if it was too much. I don't know. Once I explain it, people are probably like, "Oh, that was too much, man. Too much." But there was a lot of thought put to every paragraph. So Calzono, did I? Oh, like a This is a Carmine reference. Calzono. Oh. That's pretty funny. That's a pretty funny reference, actually. How's your calzone? Oh. It is true that Dany never really reflects on her time in Meereen in the entire chapter, but I do figure that if in the next chapter she's so I've been thinking about like so I definitely want her to go to Karth, but it's not like she can just show up in Karth with a dragon and like the Kartheen would freak out. I mean, wouldn't the Kartheen freak out? So it's like, what does she do? Like, where does she stay? I guess you would have to go back to Vaes Teloro and camp out and have like send emissaries or something. And people would come out to meet her in Vaes Teloro, because I'm just trying to think of the logistics of it. Some people already say that like a Clash of Kings makes no sense. Like, why is Dany able to walk into the city with 3 dragons and not have like one of the powers of Karth immediately rob her, of those dragons? And the only explanation I had for it was that, you have competing factions and that they're all keeping each other in check, but by the end of A Clash of Kings, all the factions kind of go anti-Dany and they all want her to leave. So, would they really let Dany into their city with a dragon? And she's also not very experienced. Would she really want to take on a city of Karth, like not knowing, like if arrows or whatever could harm Drogon? So it seems like she would want to stay outside in Vaes Teloro, and then people would visit her. Hopefully, Quaithe would actually visit her in person. So. Yeah, just, I thought about that. But then if she's chilling in Vaes Teloro a while, she's got a lot more time to think. And she can consider Meereen and all the sorts of stuff. So there's plenty of time. There's plenty of time for Dany to be in her head and think about Meereen. What are your thoughts about the more contended plot points, Quentin? Do you want to appeal to what most people would like, or what I think is best? I mean, the problem is if you can't go too much what people like, because then it's just a little, it's too wish fulfillment. You've got to disappoint people. You've got to be a little crazy. And so I think that I think that Quentin being alive, like, not only do I think it adds to the story, and I think there's stuff you can do with it. I mean, I think it fits logistically. I think it fits thematically. I think it fits practically. Like, he provides a view from inside Marine. He provides a way to get a dragon to Aegon. I think thematically he represents the the PTSD kind of character who comes back from war and is screwed up. He allows there to actually be a resolution to the sibling rivalry plot of Ariana. There's a lot of things that I think Quentin adds to, and so I think it's important that he remain alive and it be interesting. Now it's going to be very it's going to be very contentious, but yeah, no, I think it's pretty important that he goes back. The but uh Gotta hold on a second. It's like, Jackie, we've talked about this. We've talked about this a lot. Like, come on. We've gone over this a lot. Give it a rest. Anyway, back to Quentin. the but the question is like other shocking things. Like, what do you do? Like, you know, do you bring John back to life? Do people want John back to life? Do you want John to be a point of view character again? Do you just want to keep John in Ghost or whatever? Do you want Aegon to be fake? Do you want Aegon to be real? Do you want Aegon to be unknown? It's hard to know, but I think we played day by day, and that's about it, but let's see. But I think there's definitely room for huge. There's definitely room for huge, shocking things to happen. There's room for major characters to die, and the thing is like, I think one of the weaknesses of the show is that after we passed George's material, like, what shocking things happened? Like, no major characters died until the very end, right? Like, you when you think of like the big shocking things that happened in the early story, like Ned dying, the Red Wedding, Jaime losing his hand, those are all George written things. Even Oberyn dying, And then what happens after that? Like, everybody has plot armor. Like, Jaime falls in a lake and survives. Everybody has plot armor, plot armor, plot armor. I think it'll be interesting to not, to have characters not have plot armor, and that at some point, like, actually let people die. George doesn't kill characters that often, but POV characters that often. But I think, if there's a really compelling reason to kill somebody, like John or Sansa or Sam or Early, let's do it. Like, but it has to be a good story. Sansa, it's gonna be tough to come up with a reason to kill Sansa. She when she's the only point of view character around. But it's something that's gotta you gotta keep the people guessing. I think that I really like the idea of having the new characters kind of take over and having, like, for instance, Areo Hotah, like giving Areo Hotah 5 chapters and while giving, like, not necessarily Dany, but John 0 chapters in the Winds of Winter, I think would be an interesting, refreshing thing, just because it's, one, it's different from the show, but 2, it's unexpected, this is this joke that, like, the Winds of Winter would actually all be new characters, like the Feathered Archer, like, all these different people from Nath, and we don't have any. It's all new characters and no old characters. We pull a Feast for Crows, um They got plot armor to survive the 5-year gap, so maybe. Yeah, yeah. I mean, he does say in his original outline that it's like certain characters would survive until the end, right? Like Arya, Jon, Tyrion. Um, Sansa didn't exist yet, but I forget the other five. But he had Bran and Danny, right? Yeah. So um, yes. So Gilly, and the Cinnamon Wind. So my idea so far in my head about Sam is that Sam is going to be in a dark place trying to use the glass candle to find Gilly. Like he's going to be like really worried because Gilly, like my idea is that Marwyn is taking Gilly with him to Slaver's Bay. I think it's too irresistible to have Gilly meet Jorah Mormont. Like the only reason I would keep Jorah Mormont alive is so he can meet Gilly. It's the only, like I don't think there's that much interesting things to do with Jorah except have him meet Gilly. And so I think if Gilly is on her way to Slaver's Bay, which I think is too cool of an idea, that Sam is going to be obsessed with finding her. That he's going to be really upset that that Gilly is gone, and that he's going to be using his glass candle addictively, painfully, some dark turn for Sam as he starts just like scanning the world and like living in this world of him trying to find Gilly, and then the rest will be like him in the library and cleaning chamber pots. That's gonna be it? So, is that gonna be it? um, let's see here. There's somebody trying to switch to spicy politics. Um, let's see. I'll bite, Mr. Troll. I'll bite. Okay. Um, so let's talk about like morality and where, because this is going to be a shift. So we'll shift to spicy politics here. Okay. First of all, this idea, everybody thinks their morality is superior to everybody else's. This is the whole point of like you doing what you think is best. Like that's, everybody's in this. So this idea that like, do you think that you believe your political opinions are morally superior? Well, politics is morality. Okay. Politics, there's no separating politics and morality. Politics involve human consequences. So these are moral consequences. I mean, so political opinions are moral opinions. So let's not mince words. We're talking about morality here when we're talking about politics. So you leftists worship a religion where morality is relative and not absolute. There is no one that like people somehow believe that they're into absolute morality, but there's no such thing as absolute morality. Let's take like the obvious example of Christianity. The Bible is filled with a million different rules. And the question is like, so how do you know which ones to follow? I would take Matt Hunter here, right? Now, it's very, very famously like wearing blended clothing of different fabrics is considered a sin. Okay. Now, no one does this. No one bothers. Everybody gets their cotton polyester blends or whatever. No one's thinking about this kind of stuff. Like people reading the Bible relatively know. Like we use our own moral judgment and can decide. Well, that one doesn't count. That's stupid. Like, like no one would think that that's like a real thing. Like there's a book about a guy who tried to live a year biblically, and it was a big joke because you can't do it. Like human beings can't do that. So there is no absolute morality. Everyone picks and chooses what they think is important. The Bible has a lot of things, a lot of rules. You should kill your kids if they're not obedient, is one of them. You should not murder is another one. Things that contradict. So how do you resolve those contradictions? So this idea that like that somehow um, that relative morality is somehow inferior to absolute morality. There's no such thing as absolute morality. Absolute morality is a myth. It's an illusion. Everybody is picking and choosing which rules are better than others. Okay, no one is following the Bible to a T, and because one, the Bible contradicts itself, so you can't. But also, like, no one would sit there and be like, well, hold on a second. Like, that guy murdered, but that guy wore blended fabrics. Like, come on. Like, come on. Like, people use their own personal judgment to decide what rules are better. So you're completely wrong. And the fact that you've never thought about this, like, most people reading this are just like, well, yeah, that tracks. Like, but the fact that you believe that there's absolute morality out there, like, means you've never thought about this. When it's a very simple thought. Like, I mean, I think when I was like 12 or 11, I thought about, like, the idea that people pick and choose from religious texts. I mean, like, who doesn't think about this? Like, who actually out there believes there's absolute morality? Does anybody? So that's the path you've gone down. You know, to actually think that there's absolute morality that you're following. Like what? Like what set of rules? Like, people do this a lot. You know, they worship the Constitution as a dogmatic set, and you're like, well, the Constitution contradicts itself. So which thing do you value more? Like, you know, do you value equal protection under the law? Do you value states' rights? Like which things? You know. Which, do you value general welfare or do you value liberty? Because those are both really fucking important things in the Constitution. Which one comes first? You know, so troll, I've addressed that. So what's next? What's next, guys? Archaeologists discovered absolute morality in a sand dune in Cairo in 1785. This is these things. It's like so obvious. It's so obvious to anyone with like a smidgen of self-doubt, like to examine this stuff. Like, oh, do I actually believe in absolute morality? Like, come on. Like, no, there's no such thing. You're all fucking picking. Everybody's picking and choosing. So even if you think that relative morality is abysmal and morally abysmal, it doesn't matter because it's how we all live. It's how we all practically live. So it's just. But you know. This is also true. What's moral depends on your goals. All actions have been deemed moral justifiable at some point in history. It's true. It's tough. Like, I'm saying it's tough again. I know some very hippie kind of people that are like, oh man, you shouldn't like push your moral beliefs on other people. And you're like, well, the problem is that like everybody believes that to a point. Right? Like you start getting to situations like child brides, and you're like, you can't, you know, there's very few people that are like, nah, it's totally cool. I mean, except the people that are in the child bride societies, but it's very difficult to get to the point where you're like, cultural relativity. When you start getting to those points, you know, like human sacrifice and stuff, you know, like, so no one believes in like absolute relativity. And no one practices absolute objectivity. So we all live in this like illogical mess in between. So it's just it's a tough one. PJ's take transgender people in sports. I've talked about this before. I think it's a fake issue. I think that people bring this up like as if female sports or women's sports, however you want to call it, is like part of their lives. Like, no one cares. Like, This is a reason. This is a thing brought up by right wingers to like rally people to hate. Like it's an irrelevant thing to rally people against against the left. This is what the right does all the time. They find irrelevant issues to get people all upset about that are slightly popular because people haven't thought about them. Like the knee jerk reaction is, oh, I'm against that. Like the don't say gay bill in Florida. Like, oh, you shouldn't be. I'm against teaching people from kindergarten to age 3 about gay people fucking. And you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. What? Who's doing that? Like who? What? Who's doing that? Let's do a poll. Are you for like teaching kindergartners about like gay guys fucking? And you're like, what? Of course I'm against. Wait, what? And you get these like irrelevant issues. Like no one was teaching anybody about like gay dudes fucking. And then like once you actually start thinking about like the don't say gay bill or something, like you're like, oh, well, actually, like philosophically, if you tell somebody like they have a mommy and a daddy and somebody else has 2 mommies or 2 daddies, like, is that talking about like, relations? If you mention like, oh, Timmy's 2 dads are picking him up today, is that against the law? Like once you start thinking about it and analyzing it, there's issues, but the whole issue is a fake issue. There are all these fake issues brought up by the right wing to make us forget about the really important issues that really affect people's lives, like, social programs and abortion and tax policy and like, these sorts of things like really affect a lot of people. But they know that like if they bring up these irrelevant issues, and it happens every election, fucking flag burning. Like you can go back to Dukakis versus Bush 1, like flag fucking burning. Jesus Christ. It's that's just the kind of the situation. Real quick, did Roose Bolton have Ramsay try to kill? No, I don't think there was any sort of plan like that in there. But it is certainly a mystery what Roose Bolton wants with Ramsay and why he's keeping him around. But I don't think that Roose Bolton would want Daenerys killed. Oh, Pyatt Pyatt is a ghost town in Chernobyl. Floated a human heart, swollen, blue corruption. Chernobyl radiation glows blue. Huh, that's interesting. I mean, I don't know. I mean, George R. R. Martin makes that kind of connections a lot. But obviously, like in general, the House of the Undying is just supposed to be the werewood net in a different location, and then he has some sort of collective hive mind kind of situation going on, but that's interesting. I'll have to look that up about that. But yeah, we find out that the Russians are in Chernobyl dealing with radiation there. Yeah, I agree with Carmine here that the current GOP has no popular agenda to rally behind. So they what they do is they find these like niche social issues that people kind of feel strongly about that actually have very little to do with government. Most people would be like, oh, do you like this? Do you like the Pledge of Allegiance or the national anthem at ball games? And people are like, oh yeah, I like the national anthem at ball games. Oh yeah, well that Colin Kirkpatrick, wants everybody to kneel, and like, what does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with government? AOC wants to take away your hamburgers, like, but I love barbecue. Well, no, she doesn't. Like, it's always some irrelevant piece of shit topic, like tiny. And that's why I feel about like trans athletes in sports. Like, one, who gives a fuck? Like, one, like sports to start with are unfair. Like, sports are about who is born genetically different. Like, I mean, I'm from the same area as Michael Phelps, and everybody there who's celebrated. There was all these articles about how weird his body was, and it's worshipped where I'm from. Like, oh, they love him so much, and they all like have these like articles about how like he's genetically designed to be the perfect swimmer, and we're like, oh, it's so incredible. Okay, well, that doesn't make things fair, does it? Right? He was born different. So, you know, but I don't think the um yeah, but I don't think it's that important. But yeah, I do say that these don't say gay bills and critical race theory things are trying to get teachers fired. They're trying to get people uh, worried and scared. Yeah, and they're trying to rile up parents because there's no. It's all part of the same like one note chorus now of like of and I got criticized yesterday for bringing up QAnon too much. Like the GOP has taken on the exact same um, strategy as QAnon, like QAnon. They they are convinced they're trying to convince you that your little ones are gonna get molested. All right, that's all they're doing. Like everybody's a fucking pedophile. Oh, all the Democrats, they're just pedophiles. All those teachers, they're trying to groom your kids. They're just pedophiles. They just want to molest your kids. And of course, nothing riles people up more than the thought of like their kid getting molested. Like, oh gosh, that's the worst thing in the world. Like, oh yeah, well they want to molest your fucking kid. So once you turn somebody into a child molester, I mean, their life isn't worth anything, right? Like who's hated more than child molesters, right? Like, aren't we all so happy when child molesters go to jail and then they get raped in prison? Isn't it so fitting, that's the thing is you can dehumanize someone so much by making them into a child molester, right? So they're going to portray gay people as child molesters. They're going to portray trans people as child molesters. They're going to portray Democrats as child molesters. Do you remember like when the bathroom bills were first coming about, and they're all like, "Oh, when I bring my daughter into a bathroom, I don't want some dude with a dick." Like, oh, really? Yeah, that's what's going to happen. A trans person's going to go into the bathroom and molest your daughter. Like, yeah, that's thank goodness we have Republicans to protect us from the fucking child molesters just hiding in the wings constantly. The only thing stopping the ocean of child molesters from fucking your daughter are Republicans. Like that's how they portray the world. That's everything. You can boil down fucking everything to fucking like, oh, they're gonna stop people from molesting your daughter. Like that's it. Like, oh gosh. um Only trans women. Well, they do. Trans women when they transition, they do start taking the hormones. So if you're really going down this path, they brought up this one athlete recently, and the headline said like, "Oh, wins NCAA title," and then you read the article, and it's like, no, she didn't. Like, she was actually rather competitive as a man, started transitioning, started competing as a woman, and did okay. Like we don't really have the examples of um trans women dominating a sport yet. If it'll happen, I mean, plus like you got to remember, like even if we had a situation where let's say we lived in a world where, and we don't know if this is true or not, but let's say we lived in a world where trans women and regular women were actually equal. Every once in a while you would have a trans woman like win, right? Like if they were equal, a trans woman would win. So you can't use the occasional winning of a trans woman as proof that trans athletes have an advantage. But that's what's being done right now. Like anytime any trans athlete does moderately well, everybody's like, well, that just means it's unfair. Well, hold on. Like they're gonna do well occasionally, right? Like just probability wise. So we don't really have that situation. It's such a non-issue. It's such a non-issue. I mean, when I think of like issues like a woman was arrested in Texas for murder for having an abortion. Like this actually happened. Like this should be like the headline and everything, but instead people are talking about like, whether or not a kindergarten teacher can say Timmy is getting picked up by her dad by his dad's. It's tough. Um, Please explain slavery was not absolutely immoral? I mean, the people at the time didn't. I mean, the Bible mentions slaves. What are you fucking talking about, dude? Do you not know your own religion? Like, the Bible literally mentions slaves. Like, Jesus talks about slaves. What are you talking about, dude? Like, what major religion was against slavery? Like, what code coming from God? Is there a single code from coming from God that says slavery is immoral? Like, slavery being immoral is completely and utterly a human construct from like utilitarian relative like morality. Like, is there a single can anyone name a major religion that lists slavery as immoral? I mean, any like what are you fucking talking about, dude? Like, like you're really really puzzling, dude. Like, do you not have you read the Bible? Do you know your own religion? I mean, you're talking about religions that have been around thousands of years, and slavery only becoming immoral in people's minds in the last like 300 years. Did that even that concept that slavery was somehow wrong come up? Like like this is the thing, right? Like, slavery being immoral is a really new concept. Uh, man. Um Right. So I don't exactly follow everything that is said in any religion. I don't think anybody does. Everybody lives the Scientology. Maybe I actually don't know anything about Scientology, but okay, maybe if we count Scientology, which is a fairly young religion, um, that maybe in slavery, maybe slavery we do it, but like, uh, would I describe myself as an anti-theist? I mean, I guess I don't think I don't believe in a God. I don't. I think that every single person's idea of God is wrong on Earth. That if there is anything out there that it's beyond human comprehension, I don't think any religion on Earth is correct in any respect. And I base that on like I want you to like think about um, if you've ever been to a foreign country and your ideas about that foreign country before you got there, and then arriving and what it was like, you know. So like I think of myself like when I was 22 years old, you know, I had these ideas about China before I went, and then people had their ideas about China and they told me and they're like, oh, you're going to see this and this and this and this and this, and then I get there, and China is just bonkers different than I could have ever imagined. And the Chinese people had completely odd ideas about America, just crazy, crazy ideas. And this is in a world where literally like hundreds of thousands of people like go back and forth between the two countries like every year. There's like communication, there's books, there's television, constant information. Like, and yet people get this incredibly wrong perception. And now we're talking about like afterlife and God. And say at best, like these religious texts and like the few times in history a prophet has received a message from a higher power. Like, let's say at best those happened, you know, thousands of years ago or whatever. Like, that's all we have. This like tiny little like trickle of information, and yet people are so certain, so sure about what's going to happen. But generally, I think that like, you know, we're talking about things outside of existence. Like, we're talking about things beyond space and time and matter and energy and existence versus non-existence, those sorts of things. We start getting into things that we can't like things that we can't even comprehend. Like, even the concept of comprehension is beyond that. So I don't know. It's so Yeah, I'm an atheist. I'm an anti-theist. I don't believe in God, or at least I don't believe in God in in the respect of anyone has imagined it here on Earth. And I don't think I can comprehend the existence of anything if there is something. But um, oh gosh, um, what do you talk like? What are you fucking talking about, man? Like, what are you talking about? Like you came into the conversation with the idea of objective morality. Okay, objective morality is usually, is referred to as like religious morality, right? Something set down as like a set of codes given by a higher power. Like what higher power code are you referring to look to the wrongness of slavery? Um, I think slavery is wrong because I'm pretty much a utilitarian. But a utilitarian is also subject to, you know, personal relative ideas about like what is best. And so, it's a flawed system, but it's completely subjective, like utilitarianism. But that's still roughly how I live my life. Um, you came in here with this idea that leftists were inferior to rightists because rightists had objective morality. What fucking objective morality are you talking about that considers slavery immoral? Like, what objective morality? Please name it for me. Because there's no religion, no major religion. I don't know about Scientology. I don't know. I don't know about Scientology. But there's no major religion. What objective morality are you talking about? You're claiming that like the dogmatic way to go is the way to go, and that the rest of us are inferior because we don't have objective morality. Well, what objective morality are we talking about? Because you just said that slavery is wrong, and slavery is only wrong from subjective morality. It's only wrong like from the other way, from rejecting your objective morality. Man. Man, oh man. For millions of dollars, uh, I can find out. It's true. It's true. It's true. Oh man. Does it? Um, I mean, didn't the Buddhists believe that like reincarnation justified slavery because the slavery was like based on a person's previous actions in life or something? Yeah, medieval Buddhism had codified slavery. So, in fact, I think even like by the way, one of the things that China uses to justify their invasion of Tibet was the fact that Tibet had slavery before the Chinese invasion, as well. So I think that's just wrong. I'm sorry, Fire Ice. Um, um, Funny how further south, the more right you get, and that's where slavery was last. It's true. That's true. Um, Slavery is the norm, not the exception. It's just economics. This is there's some questions about this, but the about is capitalism, and if you're forced into this system, is it not slavery? Um, it's depends how you define things, but yeah, I definitely think that when you get to extreme situations like Like I would certainly, for example, call um, the labor situation of workers in the Gulf states. These are mostly Indian, Pakistani, Filipino workers that come and work for years. I would not. I would say that's very much slavery, where they have no rights at all. And but yeah, I mean, generally, the world has a lot of reasons for treating people differently, and people try to come up with their reasons for it. So yeah. Um, this is a random one. I think abortion is murder, but I'm 100% pro-choice because I don't think murder is wrong. All right, that's all right, troll. um, are you anti-capitalist? No, I'm not. I'm not anti-capitalist. I believe I believe that we should have a system similar to Scandinavia. I believe that you should have free markets when they work, and that when they don't work, you have the state intervene when the market is proven not to work, and then you have and to deal with the um, wealth rising to the top, you have a progressive tax structure that brings that wealth back down to the needy in the form of social programs that give them opportunity. So yeah, the my beliefs are really not that extreme. It's just like I believe in a modified system that we have now, just one with more help. Like that's it. I'm not for tearing down um, the systems. Uh, I'm not for leaving people to fend for themselves. I'm for a system where people are motivated to work, but at the same time, we give plenty of opportunity and helping hands to people that are in trouble. That's my belief. It's really kind of middle of the road, not too interesting. Like there's nothing, you know. Um, the I mean, I would say that yeah, I believe in, well regulated. I believe in well regulated capitalism, which I believe closer to what Adam Smith actually believed than perceptions of capitalism today. Um, on this, guns. I think guns should, for the most part, be illegal. Um, but I'm willing to settle for a removal of semi-automatic uh, or of weapons. I think America has fallen into a disgusting fetishization and identity politics world of guns. Like so I grew up shooting guns. I early part of my life I grew up in Wisconsin, and I would go in the summertime to camp and shoot guns. That shot a lot of skeet, a lot of target practice, stuff like that. But it was different when I was young, like people just, it was, I would never say like, I mean, I would not say it was different than say darts, or archery, right? Like you're just shooting some targets. And when people went out hunting, like people were bored, they wanted to walk around the woods, and they wanted to occasionally have a reason to do that. Like, it's not like I really have that much of a problem with hunting deer or whatever. But then something fucking happened in America, this fucking worship of guns, this people collecting 50 fully automatic weapons and talking about the calibers and ranges and all this shit, like, and then wearing t-shirts and getting off on the fact that they think they're scaring or owning the libs, and it just became disgusting. Like imagine if I went that, I mean, it's like, we've all gone this far on like ice and fire, but that's fairly harmless. Like, I'm not obsessed with like the mechanism for killing people. Like, it's just this weird, disgusting like fetishization that's happened with it. Becoming like a movement. So for the most part, I think our gun laws should be like Europe. I think we shouldn't. They should be very well regulated. I think you should have to get very serious licenses. I think you should. There should be smart weapons. I think you should have this re-examined every year. I think there should be heavy background checks. And unfortunately, every time there's a mass shooting, in America we lower the barriers to getting weapons. So, but it's uh, I've gotten through and keep in mind, like I've gotten through my life without a gun. I've had guns pointed at me many, like, well, I wouldn't say many times, but a few times. So uh, that colors my belief when you have a pistol pointed in your face. So, but yeah, um, yeah. I mean, this is the thing. I kind of believe that like we could we could probably solve the gun problem if we just passed a law that said that like all guns have to be painted pink with glitter and like "I love Dick" like written on the side. And then, people that really cared about hunting shouldn't like they shouldn't care, right? Oh, well, no, that's pretty safe because then I won't shoot my friend in the forest because my gun is pink and it's got glitter on it and says "I love Dick." And so it should be useful in that respect. And and it would also remove the coolness of the gun. But instead, people do think guns are cool. And the question is like why? Like why do you think guns are cool? Like what is cool about a gun? And for the most part, people think things are cool when they're dangerous. For instance, cigarettes are cool. Fast cars are cool. Um, a lot of things are cool because they're dangerous. They might bring about death, and all of us fear death. This is why religion came about. We're all scared. We're all scared of what happens when we die. But you can be really cool by saying like, oh, you know what? All you guys are scared of death, but I'm not scared of death. I'm not scared of death. Look at me. I'm going to surround myself with like implements that cause death. And therefore, you're going to think I'm cool. And maybe I can convince myself that I'm not scared of death. You know, maybe that's it. If I surround myself with guns and I just think about killing other people and killing animals and like, bang, 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 fuck yeah, yeah, war. If I can think about that all day long, maybe I won't be reminded of the fact that I'm mortal and I'm going to blink out of existence and I'm going to die. And I don't know what that means. And it scares me. Man, if only I could surround myself with guns and be cool, I would remove all that fear from my life. Yeah. Yeah, guns are cool. So cool. They tell me one thing, that you're fucking scared of dying and that you're alone in the universe. And that worries you. That's what it tells me when people are like, guns are cool. I'm like, oh, you're a scared little boy. Cigarettes aren't cool. Jewels are cool. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, this is the thing. UK works great. Doesn't have guns. There's a lot of places that are fucking great without guns. It's really, what was so nice about living in Germany? You could walk in parks at night. At fucking night. Like walking in parks. Like keep in mind that like ever since I've been mugged a few times when I was young. And ever since, um, like at night, like when it's dark and I'm by myself, my heart starts beating. Because I think about it, like, it's pretty scarring to like be walking home at night and then have somebody run out and point a gun into your face. It stayed with me for a while. And the so weirdly, like walking in German parks at night, and there's just people out, like in the pitch black, having picnics, jogging, going for walks with their girlfriends, going for just an evening stroll because it's nighttime. And it was just so weird. It was so weird. Like somebody jogged up behind me at a park at night in Germany, and I was like, ah, ah. I was like, no, he was just jogging. And like when I tell Germans, like, no, we don't go to parks at night. And like Germans were like, oh, that's really sad. It is really sad. Like walking in parks at night, it's really nice. It's really nice. But something we Americans don't get to do. Something as simple as that. Yeah, I mean, it's illegal to be in parks at night in America, because of the guns and the drugs and things like that. The things that, I mean, the two things that ruin America, right? Like the two things that have fucking ruined America are drugs and guns, right? Uh, yeah. How many languages do I speak? I don't know if I speak any very well, but I've studied Spanish at school. Took a couple years of Latin. Uh, studied Chinese, Mandarin, pretty extensively. I've studied a little Jordanian and Mia, and I've studied a little Egyptian and Mia. But um, like the languages I'm most comfortable in, like I guess I'm pretty conversational in Chinese and Spanish. Like I can get around. Like I can get anything I want. I may sound like an idiot, but I can get anything I want. Like I can explain myself. Like the other day I had to go into a sporting goods store and like get a swimming cap for my son, and it's like, yeah, I'm going in there and I'm asking for like a hat for swimming, which turned out actually to be the correct term, but I just like guessed. Like I would like a hat for swimming for little kids, and it's like, oh, it turned out to be okay. Um, Two things that ruined America are corporations and banks. Maybe, you know, maybe, you know, drugs, guns, and racism. It's true. It's true. You know, it's making out Danish girls in the park at 3 a.m. was the best. It's true. When do you get to do that? When do you get to do that in America? Um, I mean, I remember when I was young, like, yeah, being in a park at night, making out with a girl, and having the cops uh, harass me and give me a ticket and sending me on my way. So that happened. Um, oh, totally disrespecting a cop in America. No, oh my god. Oh god. I was given a ticket for something I didn't do once when I was young. Um, when I was not drunk and disorderly in a park, I was given a ticket for drunk and disorderly in a park by a cop when I was young. I went to court and I fought it. And I won, but it took me the entire day. Like the judge was like, "Okay, like I'm really sorry, like, but okay, fine." But it was like a point. I was like, "Oh, I'm not gonna pay this $50 ticket." Um, you know. Uh, um, Gun culture is a lot like drug culture. It used to be better when people kept that shit on the down low and only discussed it with their fellow club members. I guess so. That's the thing. It's just, yeah, when it all becomes like, um, that's the thing is when weed became like wearing weed paraphernalia and going nuts about it. Or even like college beer guys. Like, yeah, everybody loves beer. We don't need a poster on your wall to tell us how much you like beer. Like to have like beer identity or weed identity or gun identity. It's really weird to have a cultural identity for things. People, this is kind of an American thing, or maybe it's becoming a global thing about identity and consumption. Like why people think that consumption um, is so important for their identity. You know, like I need to go to this snooty coffee shop and have this fancy coffee because if I drink this fancy coffee, people will think I'm fancy. Well, no, you just fucking drank a fancy coffee. Like, you know, a non-fancy person can drink a fancy coffee. You know, like so this odd thing, odd thing like people feel like if you consume a certain product that you'll become a certain type of person, you know. Like I will become an intellectual if I go to this fancy restaurant and eat a fancy meal. I'll become a fancy person. It's a very, very, very kind of weird thing. I will become a strong person who doesn't fear death. I will be a strong person if I consume guns and worship guns. But it's a um no, I don't think there'll be a balkanization of America in the next 20 years. I just think that a right winger will come in and make it more of a fascist state, and that the left wingers will just think about you know something else, pop culture or the products they consume or something. They'll be distracted and will feel sad. That's all. I don't think America's going to break up. I just think it's just going to become more fascist. That's all. Anyway, man, I've been bringing things down. You guys have been bringing me down. All right, one more question before we end things. It's 1 o'clock. I've been on here for 3 hours. Um, uh, yeah, I mean, I think it's everybody in America. So like, I don't think it's just like the NYC people. I do think it's the NYC people. Like, I think like it's definitely apparent like hipsters in in Brooklyn and all. Like, if you wear the right clothes and you consume the right products, that you will become somehow hip and cool. Um, but it's everybody, all right? Like it's everybody feeling like if they consume a certain thing, they will become a certain thing, right? Um, yeah, so it's only in the US do the left call for home ownership. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. The All right, Kraken Queen. Let's see if I missed some super chats. Before I go. Let's see here. Let's see. Ta, 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 ta. Where do I think Quentin is? I think he's hiding in a pyramid in Marine, because that's where we last saw Viserion like flying to and taking up residence. So I think he's hiding in one of the abandoned pyramids. And where do I think he's going? I think he's going to return and deliver a dragon to Aegon. Will he meet Daenerys again? Maybe during the Dance of the Dragons. I think that's probably going to happen. Let's see here. Fanfic pushes George R. R. Martin to finish The Winter or cancel it. I don't think he's going to notice, or he's going to finish it either way. Um, so it's um we have more chances now for World of Winds of Winter than before. If George R. R. Martin books are announced, plan never comes to pass. The same applies to the blog. Um, yeah, I just think that over time over time the real Winds of Winter becomes less and less likely. I think it's a fraction of 1% at this point. Um, oh, The I guess, man, I'm sorry I missed a lot of these super chats. If George R. R. Martin dies and then others could legally release their own ending of Song of Ice and Fire, as long as they put it out for free. Nah, I don't think it works that way. I think like once he dies, the rights would go to his wife Paris for then 105 years. I think is the current law, right? Current copyright law, and so we have to go for long after all of us are dead is when George R. R. Martin's work would enter the public domain. Because it's something in America, it's like 105 years from death of author. And, I mean, like related to that, like that Enola Holmes movie that was released, they got sued for that movie because there's a few Sherlock Holmes movies or Sherlock Holmes stories that have not entered the public domain. Only just a few. And in those few, Sherlock Holmes is not a autistic, like computerized, like person. He has more of a personality. And so in the Enola Holmes movie, because Sherlock Holmes had too much personality, was like too much of a regular person, they declared that they were violating copyright, and they sued and they settled. Like the Enola Holmes movie, like paid out money to the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle estate because the character wasn't Sherlocky, enough, that he was too human of a character, and that only appeared in the stories that they had copyright ownership to. So, no, like it could never be anything big. Like people beyond that stuff, like flies on shit. That's the thing. Um, it's and okay, I think I've gotten everything here from now on. Okay. All right. Is that everything? Okay. Anyway, thank you everyone for sticking with me. Hope this was fun. I will talk to you guys soon. And yeah, this week I'll have out probably another over analyzing House of the Dragon episode, and then I'll probably also release like what I want for the Areo Hotah chapter, and then I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks everyone.